What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back with the box office breakdown for Sunday, September 21st, where the story of the weekend is Sony Pictures, where they must be experiencing something that can only be described as box office whiplash, because they have two movies in the theater right now, one of which is bombing hard, and one of which is just an international sensation. And of course, I'm talking about Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, which now stands at $555 million worldwide, off of a budget of what is being reported $20 million, and compare that to A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, which is bombing hard, open to $3 million off a reported budget or an acquisition cost of $50 million by Sony. I don't know what it cost to make A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, but Sony acquired it. I saw some people saying they acquired it for $45 million. Some people say they acquired it for $50 million. In any case, it is a spectacular box office failure. And just to put the failure in perspective, I was out at breakfast this morning with one of my brothers who's 23, and his lady friend joined us, and I was talking about this upcoming video, and I mentioned A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, and I started describing the trailer and the plot, and I wasn't describing it in glowing terms because I saw the trailer and I wanted to vomit. I mean, I felt like I was getting diabetes just by watching it. But when I described the premise for the movie, my brother's girlfriend was like, "Oh, that sounds amazing." I was like, well, why didn't you go? Like, y'all are the target audience. Y'all are a couple who should have gone to see it as a date movie, and neither of them had even heard of it. I think one of them had seen maybe a 3-second trailer on social media or something like that. But it raises a really interesting question about Margot Robbie's star power, because obviously 2 summers ago with Barbie, she made one of the biggest box office sensations that the world has ever seen. And here we are 2 years later, where she's in a romantic comedy or a romantic drama, and the movie is just collapsing and dying on its opening weekend. And it just shows to me how star power in the 2020s, it's execution dependent. Like in the 1990s, when Julia Roberts was the biggest star in the world, no matter what movie she made, a certain number of people would show up for every single movie just because it was Julia Roberts and she was their favorite movie star. But Margot Robbie, clearly people like her as Harley Quinn. People clearly like her as Barbie. But if she goes off and tries to make an original movie, not based on a pre-existing character, well, then she's got to fight that uphill box office battle all over again. And I commend her for trying to make an original movie. There are actually a couple original movies in the theater this weekend, but none of them really performed all that well. Well, we had Him, which underperformed, as well as A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. But if you look at the critic scores and if you look at the audience scores, none of them are good for either of these movies. But the reality is, in the 2020s, if you want to make an original movie, you got to put your best foot forward. You got to bring your A game. And we saw this summer, in this past spring, some original movies breaking out. Sinners did fine. F1 did fine. Weapons did more than fine. Like, the audience is there, but from what I'm hearing about A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, it was just syrupy sweet and super cheesy. And once again, I took one look at the trailer and I got about halfway through, started hearing that really cheesy theme song that's blasting throughout. And I was like, you know what? I would rather have 2 ice picks inserted through my testicles than subject myself to this movie, unless I'm on a date with somebody who's like, oh my God, I know this is not for you, but I would really appreciate it if you go see this cheesy movie with me and we can watch UFC afterwards. Like, I'll pay you back. Then I would have conceded and been willing to go see it. And that's how date movies are supposed to work. Like, guys drag women to the action movies and girls drag the men to the cheesy date movies. But if the girls don't want to see it, or if the girls are seeing it and they're not liking it, once again, low audience scores, low critical scores, well, then the movie's basically dead in the water. And if it's opening at $3 million in 6th place, well, then it's only going to go down from there. And if it had amazing audience scores, well, then it might go up in the coming weeks as like word of mouth starts to spread and people start to really bang the drum on its behalf. I think A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey is proof that Margot Robbie is going to have to be incredibly selective moving forward. If she wants to win that Oscar, which every actress wants to win, obviously she's got the box office clout now due to Barbie. But in the years to come, she's going to need to be increasingly selective when it comes to the screenplays that she signs onto and the filmmakers that she works with, because this is going to open the door to the question, how will Wuthering Heights perform early next year? Emerald Fennell wrote and directed the adaptation of the Emily Bronte novel. I've never read the Emily Bronte novel. I read her sister Charlotte's novel, Jane Eyre, back in 8th grade. But when the trailer first dropped, I saw a lot of people saying, if Margot Robbie just wants to go off and make a softcore porn film with Jacob Elordi, then just go off and make like an old-fashioned softcore porn movie with Jacob Elordi. Why take a novel from 1847 and try to like alter it or modernize it or change it? In any case, I don't really have a dog in this fight, but famously, Netflix wanted the movie, but they were unwilling to commit to a big theatrical release. Warner Brothers was. So Warner Brothers ended up being the home for Wuthering Heights, but I'm sure Warner Brothers is paying very close attention to the performance of A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey and thinking, how do we make Wuthering Heights feel much more electric and exciting and must-see? But if Wuthering Heights is yet another bomb, Warner Brothers, not only will they have a lot of buyer's remorse, but Warner Brothers also is the home for the Barbie franchise. They might say, all right, Margot Robbie, we let you make Wuthering Heights. We lost a shitload of money. Can you please give us a Barbie 2 just to kind of balance the scales? But getting back to A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey and Sony Pictures and all the Sony execs who are crying into their Sunday morning coffee right now, at least they can take some consolation in the fact that they're also distributing Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, which became the most popular anime movie released in the theater in North America in a week. And it was already smashing records around the world, and it's been smashing records in Japan. But that movie, according to reports, cost $20 million to make, and it's grossing $555 million and counting, with two more movies on the way. It's performing better than Fantastic Four First Steps. And Fantastic Four First Steps did not cost $20 million to make. But I feel like Demon Slayer is a great example of how to build a proper phenomenon in the 2020s, where in the 20-teens, it started out just as a manga. They built up to 23 volumes, but they built their audience slowly, inexpensively with comic books. And then they started with the show, the anime, which slowly caught on. And then they made a movie out of the second season, or the first half of the second season. And that, the Mugen Train arc, was one of the most popular animated movies ever to come out of Japan. And then they just been building from there. And there's this whole thriving YouTube community making lore videos and doing breakdowns of the characters. And admittedly, when it comes to fans of anime and Japanese animation, there are a lot of people in that community. I shouldn't even call it a community, but I should say amongst the fans, a lot of them hate Demon Slayer, like, oh, the show is trash. It's just like, cotton candy for people who don't like anime. No matter what people might think about it, I mean, I love Demon Slayer. I think it's incredibly addictive. I love the combat. I love the characters. I love the lore. I love the music. It's an absolute roller coaster ride, and I've been revisiting a lot of classic episodes, all of which hold up very well. Like, there's definitely some meat to dig into if you're fond of, background stories for characters and that sort of thing. And I should acknowledge that in North America, Demon Slayer had a horrific second weekend drop. Clearly, the movie was front-loaded in its performance, where all the nerds and all the fans showed up on the opening weekend, and now you're just seeing some people that are seeing it for like a second or third time. But the reality is, it opened at such a high number, and the budget's so low, it doesn't matter. Even if the movie doesn't sell another ticket, it's still going to be one of the biggest box office successes and one of the most profitable box office successes of 2025. But these are the kinds of returns and numbers that are going to make a lot of people sit up and take notice. And the big question now is, to what degree will there be spillover popularity for other franchises like Dan-Da-Dan, or is it Dan-Da-Dan or Dan-Da-Dan? But anyway, Dan-Da-Dan just had their season 2 finale this past week on Crunchyroll, and they've been kind of slowly rolling out over the course of the summer after being launched by a movie. And we've got Angel's Egg back in theaters after 40 years. Spirited Away is returning to theaters after 25 years, or nearly 25 years. And we have a Chainsaw Man movie coming out the end of October. And there's a Jujutsu Kaisen movie coming out in early December. There's a lot of anime heading our way.
久しぶりだな、善逸。
And I'll be paying very close attention to all the box office returns for all the above. Like, is Demon Slayer just a once-in-a-generation, like, just worldwide phenomenon? Or is it the beginning of a trend where everybody keeps wondering what's going to replace, like, the superhero movie in the American marketplace? I don't know if anime will ever be mainstream enough in America where it can supplant Marvel and DC and that whole pop culture phenomenon that we saw unfold over the last 20 years. But it can at least stop the bleeding, and also inexpensive to make. And I'm going to keep coming back to this. Demon Slayer Infinity Castle cost $20 million to make, and it has now grossed $555 million worldwide. That is serious money. Whereas a lot of Hollywood blockbusters, when they get to around like 500 million or 600 million, maybe they're entering the period where they start begin to break even, and then they try to make the rest of their money off like digital sales and that sort of thing. But as far as I'm concerned, open up the floodgates, bring it on. I'm open to all of it, because I can remember in the 80s and 90s where if you were a fan of anime, it was like a niche little subculture. If you were even aware of Ghost in the Shell or Ninja Scroll or Akira, it just made you not only a nerd, but like the ultimate super nerd. And I feel kind of vindicated now that anime has become so popular around the globe. The same way I felt vindicated when superhero movies started to take off like a rocket. It's like, yeah, we've been saying this for decades, that these stories have potential, but nobody's been listening. Nerds usually are like 20, 30 years ahead of the curve on something that's about to become popular, and now anime is starting to enjoy its moment. Or who knows, maybe it'll just be Demon Slayer. But high five to all the creators behind Demon Slayer, and I eagerly look forward to the last 2 movies in the franchise. But let's turn the page and talk about Him, the new horror film about the world of football, produced by Jordan Peele, not directed by him. But from the way they used his name in the advertising, you would have thought that he directed the movie. But I thought it started off okay, and then got a little worse, and by the end had just completely plummeted and disintegrated into the world of just complete and total idiocy, where I felt like a moron just even being in the theater watching that confused spectacle unfold. It was a total creative misfire. And it did all right on its opening weekend. It opened to $13.5 million in North America, and the budget was $28 million. And it had been predicted to open around 15. So it was kind of a box office miss, but internationally, it did almost no business whatsoever. Right now, Him internationally, they only managed to add 400,000 more from 25 international markets. So I don't think Him is going to necessarily catch on. And if you look at the critical reviews as well as the audience reception, nobody really seems to be going to bat for Him. Or maybe some people are willing to go to bat because if a movie makes a strong first impression, sometimes you're just willing to give it a pass for its shortcomings later in the movie, or you're just not willing to acknowledge those flaws if you really like where it starts. So it wouldn't surprise me if some people are like, you know what, fuck you. Him was pretty cool. Fine. Enjoy Him. Watch it a million times. Knock yourself out.
Are you willing to sacrifice everything?
My big problem with Him, and I'll leave a link to my review down in the description below, but it takes itself very seriously. And when a movie's kind of dumb at its core and it takes itself very seriously, well, then it becomes very easy to point at it and laugh, especially when it's trying to dangle its feet over a few social issues and that sort of thing. And if you're going to dangle your feet over social issues, well then you better do it with some complexity or some bold original ideas. You can't just use social issues as a crutch or as a shield to deflect yourself from any legitimate criticism. But the movie got a C- on CinemaScore, and CinemaScore pulls people as they're coming out of the theater with that immediate first impression where they haven't had a chance to think about the movie yet. That's abysmal. Like, you want an A- for your movie, and if it's an A-, then maybe it'll develop some legs or some positive word of mouth and get some momentum going. Him's going to be dead in the water. And so, as I said in my review, I think Jordan Peele should have taken his name off the movie, because Jordan Peele right now, he's having a little trouble getting his fourth feature off the ground. And he doesn't need a box office failure, one that's being ridiculed by both fans and critics alike, to kind of weigh down his reputation. But he's a talented dude. I'm sure he'll bounce back. But I saw another movie in the theater this week at the New York Film Festival. I saw the new movie No Other Choice from director Park Chan-wook. Park Chan-wook is most famous for the original Old Boy from South Korea. He's a strong contender for the best director operating out of South Korea right now. But that movie doesn't come out until December, so we'll have to wait a few months. But I will say this: No Other Choice is very solid, but if you're hoping for an experience on the level of Old Boy, bring your expectations down just a tad. And I should also say, today is the 50th anniversary of one of the coolest American movies of the 1970s.
It was a sideshow.
Sonny! Sonny!
But for Sonny and Sal, the hostages, and the cops, it was a dog day afternoon.
Dog Day Afternoon from director Sidney Lumet. And I'm not going to go ranting and raving about Dog Day Afternoon right now, because yesterday I posted my 50th anniversary tribute video. So if you love badass, like kinetic, just like hyperbolic, over-the-top, insane movies from the 1970s, starring Al Pacino and John Cazale and Charles Durning and all sorts of incredible actors, definitely check out Dog Day Afternoon if you've never seen it. But if you're already a fan of the movie, then consider giving my anniversary review a look after you finish this box office breakdown. But I think at this point, I've been shrieking enough about my own opinions. Let's get the opinions of the experts over at Variety with Rebecca Rubin's article titled, Box Office, Him debuts to $13.5 million, a big, bold, beautiful journey bombs with $3.5 million. Him, a sports thriller about a football player training to be the greatest of all time, won't be the box office GOAT after all. The film opened slightly behind expectations with $13.5 million from 3,168 North American venues. Earlier in the weekend, Him seemed on track to debut to $15 million. Either way, those ticket sales weren't enough to dethrone last weekend's champ, Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba, Infinity Castle. After a close race for number one, the anime smash from Sony-owned Crunchyroll easily ruled again at the domestic box office with $17.3 million in its second frame. Him followed behind in the number 2 spot. Meanwhile, this weekend's other new release, A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, cratered in 6th place with $3.5 million from 3,330 venues. The star power of Margot Robbie and Colin Farrell couldn't overcompensate for terrible reviews, a 38% Rotten Tomatoes average, and bad buzz, a B- grade on CinemaScore exit polls, meaning A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey likely won't describe the film's box office run. Him also opened at the international box office, where it bombed with $400,000 from 25 markets. That brings the film's global tally to $13.86 million, million. Him cost $27 million and won't require a ton to turn a theatrical profit. That's the good news. The bad is that critics and audiences rejected the film. It was saddled with a 28% Rotten Tomatoes average and C- grade on CinemaScore, which will hurt word of mouth during its big screen run. Produced by Jordan Peele and directed by Justin Tipping, the psychological thriller follows an aging quarterback, Marlon Wayans, who trains a rising football star, Tyreek Withers, to some chilling consequences. Producer Jordan Peele, whose name is featured throughout the campaign, is primarily responsible for the success, but the movie is not being received well, says analyst David A. Gross of Franchise Entertainment Research. A cinema score of C or C+ is common for a horror film. A C- indicates some dissatisfaction. Yeah, no shit. The way I phrased it in my review is that Marlon Wayans, it's a shame he didn't wait just a couple months to see how this movie would play and then get his brothers together to make a comedy making fun of him, because I feel like the comedy making fun of him would have been a far superior film than the actual film itself. But getting back to the article, a big, bold, beautiful journey opened behind already soft expectations of 8 to 10 million. The movie also stumbled internationally with 4.5 million from 45 markets for a bleak 8 million worldwide total. After young filmmaker Kogonada directed from a script by the Menu screenwriter Seth Rice, the R-rated film, which follows two single strangers who meet at a wedding and get to relive important moments from their respective pasts, carries a $45 million price tag. That's a big number to recoup, says Gross, considering the reviews are not good and the audience score is lukewarm. So far, Demon Slayer has generated $103 million domestically to stand as the biggest anime film in North American box office history. Although ticket sales collapsed by roughly 75% from its record-breaking $70 million debut, this weekend's $17.3 million tally is notable because those returns would have been impressive in its initial frame. The film, which is being released elsewhere by Aniplex and Toho, has also officially become the highest-grossing anime film in the rest of the world, with $451 million internationally and $555 million worldwide. Infinity Castle is the first in a trilogy about a boy becomes a demon slayer to avenge his family and find a cure for his sister who is turned into a demon. Hype for the initial cinematic adventure certainly bodes well for the two follow-up films. All right, I got to pause here and regrettably have to push back on Ruben's analysis because she's clearly unaware of the fact that there were 63 episodes of the show before Demon Slayer Infinity Castle. In some of those seasons, they would be released as either a condensed version as a movie, or sometimes the movie would be the last episode of the previous season and the first episode of the next season. And so people are accustomed to seeing Demon Slayer on the big screen, but they're just more accustomed to watching it on Crunchyroll. And if you don't have a Crunchyroll subscription, definitely get one because it's just this ocean, this giant library of anime that'll keep you busy for a very long time. Nonetheless, I'll forgive Ruben's ignorance about Demon Slayer because I feel like most American moviegoers are as unfamiliar with anime as most people were with comic books when superhero movies first really started catching on in the late 90s and early 2000s. Sometimes nerdy stuff just takes a long time to catch on, but I think the success of Demon Slayer shows an appetite for new franchises, new stories. It helps that Demon Slayer is just a classic tale of good versus evil, where you have these Demon Slayers with these incredible breathing techniques, which basically give them certain powers, whether it's mist powers or sound powers or flame powers or love powers or whatever the case may be. And they're going up against these demons who regenerate very quickly, who live for a very, very long time, and they get more powerful the longer they live, and sometimes it takes a couple Demon Slayers to take out one of those powerful demons. And now we're building up to this big, bold, beautiful climax, to borrow a turn of phrase from its rival movie, which is underperforming. And I suspect that the next Demon Slayer movie will open north of $100 million in North America. And if that's a successful movie, and I know where the story's going, I know what the climax is, the final movie might be like a Pixar movie back in the great heyday when Pixar used to do really, really well. It might even do $1 billion. I mean, maybe I'm getting way over my skis and way ahead of myself. But if the first Demon Slayer movie in the Infinity Castle arc can do $555 million and counting, I think there's a real chance that the finale of the trilogy in a few years will just blow people's fucking minds. But back to the article. Elsewhere, holdover titles rounded out the top 5 on box office charts. Third place went to The Conjuring Last Rites, which added a sizable $13 million from 3,413 locations in its third weekend of release. So far, the paranormal thriller has become the highest grossing in the franchise, with $151.2 million domestically and $400 million globally. The fourth Conjuring continues a stellar run for Warner Brothers' owned New Line Cinema, which has crossed the $1 billion mark this year, thanks to horror hits like Final Destination, Bloodlines, and Weapons. And at the risk of overstating the obvious, those are some serious numbers for The Conjuring Last Rites. An inexpensive movie to make. I think it cost $55 million to make. I'll have to go back and check my notes. But it was a modestly scaled movie, a little bit more expensive than Weapons. But yeah, Warner Brothers is having an incredible year, and the big test is coming later this week with One Battle After Another. I'm seeing it in IMAX 70mm on Wednesdays. But we'll continue with the topic later this week. And this all comes at a time where there are two major players considering buying Warner Brothers. Both Netflix and Paramount, or I should say Skydance, are considering making bids to buy Warner Brothers. So it helps when you have an incredible year of box office success, as well as movies that people actually like when you're shopping your studio around to potentially the highest bidder. But back to the article. Lionsgate's Stephen King adaptation The Long Walk and Downton Abbey, the grand finale, tied for fourth place, with each film estimating $6.3 million over the weekend. The final order will be confirmed on Monday. The Long Walk declined 46% from its debut, marking a decent hold for the modestly priced film. The Long Walk, a thriller about teens who participate in a brutal contest where they must continuously walk or die, has generated $22.7 million domestically against a $20 million budget. Downton Abbey, the grand finale, by comparison, declined by 66% from its first weekend. The film, backed by Focus Features and designed to bid farewell to the franchise that started with television and spawned several theatrical adventures, has grossed $31.6 million in North America and $59.5 million worldwide. The first Downton Abbey movie was hugely successful with $96 million domestically and $194 million worldwide. That film was released in 2019, a completely different era at the box office. The 2022 sequel, A New Era, debuted after COVID upended the theatrical landscape and ultimately earned $44 million in North America and $92.6 million globally. Also new to theaters, the Angel Studios sports drama The Senior opened at number 7 with a soft $2.7 million from 2,405 theaters. The inspirational true story follows a 59-year-old who becomes a college football linebacker. Audiences embraced the PG-rated film with an A grade on CinemaScore exit polls. Overall box office returns are 4.4% ahead of 2024, while still more than 22% behind 2019, according to ComScore. The next 2 weekends should provide a boost as Paul Thomas Anderson's action epic One Battle After Another, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, and Taylor Swift's newly announced The Official Release Party of a Showgirl land on the big screen. Yeah, I don't know how well One Battle After Another is going to perform because that movie cost $130 million to make, but it might do well. I mean, the trailers are looking increasingly exciting. The first trailer was terrible. The most recent trailer was pretty goddamn cool. And reviews have been through the roof. I'm seeing that on Wednesday, so we shall see what we shall see. As far as Taylor Swift goes, I mean, her last concert film, the Eras, I don't even know if this is actually a concert film or not, but her last movie, of the Eras Tour, did extremely well. Was that last year or the year before? I can't even remember. In any case, Taylor Swift, world's most popular pop music icon. I have as much interest in seeing a Taylor Swift movie as I do One Big Beautiful or A Big Bold Beautiful Journey or Downton Abbey. But it's always a relief to have variety in the marketplace and options. And speaking of options, not only am I seeing One Battle After Another on Wednesday this week, I'm seeing The Smashing Machine tomorrow night, assuming all goes according to plan. Whenever I have early access to a movie, I always assume that like the projector is going to break or something horrible will happen. But 2 of the most anticipated movies of the fall, I'm seeing them this week. So stay tuned for those reviews. And also just a general reminder, definitely check out my 50th anniversary review for Dog Day Afternoon, one of the coolest movies of the 1970s. In any case, I think that's all I've got to say for this week. But brace yourself for a lot more anime in the future. That's my prediction. And for people who've never seen any animation from Japan ever, start with the essentials. Like watch Spirited Away from Hayao Miyazaki, or watch Akira, or watch Ninja Scroll. Like watch the ones that really blew people's minds, or Belladonna of Sadness. Like I'm biased towards the really good movies instead of the really good shows, but if you want just a great show to get completely sucked into, like if you're bored by Alien Earth, and if you're bored by The Peacemaker, and if you're bored by fucking lame-ass Marvel movies and that sort of thing, there's a show called Attack on Titan, where in the very first episode you'd be like, whoa, I've never seen anything quite like this, and you'll love the characters, and the action's horrific, and it's genuinely terrifying at times, genuinely thrilling at times. But there's some good shit out there. I mean, the Japanese have been creating incredible comics and incredible animation for a very, very long time. So the good news is if you like what you see, there's just this ocean of incredible stuff. Like no matter how much manga I read, no matter how much animation I watch, I always feel like I'm just barely scratching the surface and there's always more to be explored. But I'm officially rambling at this point. It's time to wrap up this video. Hope you like the rant. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.